mental health is failing.
Well, they just had stuff come out too about kids.
Yeah. I had my daughter had her checkup just last week, and a pediatrician's like, this is killing me.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 6:36 and a quorum of members is present, so the meeting of the Board of Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby.
Here.
Mr. Helmer.
Here.
Mr. Kurth. Here. Ms. Manley.
Here.
Ms. Schulz.
Here.
Ms. Unger.
Here.
Ms. Wondercheck.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session.
Madam President, I move to recess into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, 1C, E, and F of the Wisconsin statutes to consider A, the approval of closed session minutes of June 22nd, 2020, and B, employment, performance, and compensation matters pertaining to staff. Second.
Motion by Mr. Kurth and a second by Mr. Helmer. Please call the roll.
Mr. Kurth. Yes. Mr. Helmer.
Yes.
Ms. Crosby.
Yes.
Ms. Manley.
Yes.
Ms. Schulz.
Yes.
Ms. Unger.
Yes.
Ms. Wondercheck.
We'll be moving into closed session and return to open session around 7 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 7 p.m. and we are returning from closed session into open session. In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Please rise. And now for those who wish to prepare for the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by posting the agenda at the district office and the city library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the Journal-Sentinel, the Waukesha Freeman, and the Waukesha Now, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. Next item on our agenda is the privilege of the floor. We do have 2 that were emailed in. So this portion of the meeting is an opportunity for you to come and voice your concerns to the board. Presentations are not to be designed for purposes of engaging others in debate and discussion of certified, classified, or professional personnel of individual board members shall be considered not considered an appropriate topic and will be ruled out of order. So, go ahead.
From Tom Schneider at 4000 South Adele Avenue in New Berlin. Last week, a board member during the school reopening debate stated that the hybrid method was not safe compared to reopening the schools 5 days a week. No evidence was cited for this statement, and that is because it is not true. Many countries in Europe opened their schools in the spring using the hybrid method. These countries did not encounter outbreaks in their schools using this method. In contrast, Israel fully reopened their schools and suffered significant outbreaks. Closer to home, we can look at the start of Major League Baseball. Baseball has significant procedures in place to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Daily nasal or saliva testing for COVID-19, daily temperature checks, access to trained medical personnel. These are just a few of the precautions baseball has put in place. Despite all these precautions that our school district does not have the resources available to implement, COVID-19 has continued to spread in baseball clubhouses. We cannot approach the school year without a solid plan based on facts and not wishes. Hope is not a strategy. If we want to maximize the amount of time our students can spend in the classroom, we need to do what is necessary to slow the spread of this infection. That requires a hybrid method of returning to schools. It has worked in other places. It can work in our school district. And from Carrie Thorson, 9364 West Loomis Road in Franklin. Dear Superintendent Garza and School District of New Berlin School Board, I hope you are doing well during this uncertain time in education. My name is Carrie Thorson, and I am a 3rd grade teacher at Orchard Lane. This upcoming school year will be my 8th year in teaching and 2nd year in the district. The students that I teach inspire me on a daily basis, and I would do anything for my class. They are my kids for the school year, and each and every child in my classroom has a profound impact on my life. I take absolute pride in working in a school district that inspires students to take pride in their education and provide support to both students and staff. However, with the possibility of schools opening in the fall for an in-school 5-day-per-week plan, I have some questions and concerns regarding both student and educator support. In regard to the classroom, if we are following CDC guidelines for social distancing, many classrooms at the elementary level are much smaller, which makes it nearly impossible to distance even 3 feet apart. If we are going with smaller class sizes, what will this look like at the elementary level? When taking social distancing into consideration, many elements that would occur in our classroom on a daily basis now would have to significantly change. What happens with classroom libraries, buddy reading, partner work, and hands-on activities now? Social interaction is crucial for the development of our learners. What will this look like for the academic needs of our learners? We want nothing more than to be able to provide instruction to all of our learners and to close the gap in reading and math. What will be put into place for small groups and interventions to run effectively. In regard to the health of students and staff, I teach third grade. The minimum suggested in the draft is that students who are in fourth grade or higher are required to wear masks. What if a student at the fourth and above level has a sibling that is third grade or lower? Will that sibling be required to wear a mask since they live in the same household? If a student is out sick, will that student and their family be required to be tested, even if it's just mild symptoms? I understand that more funds will need to be allocated to PPE and sanitation protocol. How many boxes of PPE are going to be given to each classroom in the case that either a student may have contaminated their mask from being sick, or the student does not have an extra mask with them? What systems will be put into place with plastic dividers for classrooms that cannot follow the 6-foot guideline? In the case that a student does have COVID-19, what will quarantining look like, not only for that student's class, but for anyone who has interacted with that student, including specialists? What happens if the school administrators or secretaries get sick? Who takes on that responsibility? In the case that a teacher gets sick, how will this affect our sick pay? Who is accountable if a symptom isn't caught? What options will be put into place for teachers that are uncomfortable coming into the building right now? If a teacher is out sick, what will coverage look like for that teacher? Will there be more building subs for each school to provide coverage? I understand that coming up with a plan for the 2020-2021 academic school year is something that involves a lot of discussion and consideration. Things can change throughout the year, and it is important to be prepared for what will come our way. I do believe that it is too early to open up schools 100% right now, especially with the rising cases in Wisconsin. Whichever decision you make, I will continue to be there for my students and to provide the education they need in order to succeed. I just ask that you please take into consideration how much this impacts both our students and staff members. Thank you for the continued support that you've provided to teachers through distance learning during the spring of the 1920 academic year. It was something that many of us were accustomed to, but were able to persevere through with the support not only of the district itself, but with the support of my colleagues and administration at Orchard Lane.
Moving on, the president's message. So I wanted to let everybody know on July 13th, we held a board workshop here where we discussed our mission and our goals as a board. After this meeting, we'll be posting these on the district website. So after much discussion on the role of the board, we adopted a mission of the board is here to oversee the district, to live out its mission through accountability, vision, community leadership, and policy. We also developed our strategic goals to align with the district's 3-year strategic plan, which we'll be seeing tonight. These goals include goals within student achievement, fiscal responsibility, staffing, and community. For student achievement, our goals are to oversee the district, increase the district-wide state report card by 2 points over 3 years, continue to expand opportunities for students and understand the student experience through having more student reps at our meetings, attending events at schools when we can, and spending time in the classroom. For fiscal responsibilities, our goals are to balance the budget yearly without depleting the fund balance and to be stewards of our physical assets. In staffing, our goals are to understand the staff experience through involvement in state interviews, as well as a goal of retaining 90% of staff each year. And finally, for the community, our goal is to ensure that communication out to stakeholders is timely and looking at posting not only our agenda prior to the meetings, but also a summary after our meetings. We look forward to discussing the district's 2020-2023 strategic plan, and we'll live out our mission to oversee the district oversee the district live out its mission. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Garza.
All right, and just a friendly reminder, not that you, Amy, weren't able to speak clearly, but we did get communication from folks that were watching the board meeting that they couldn't necessarily hear some of the board members or even like the person that spoke last time. So just a friendly reminder to move your microphones up as closely as possible, especially now that we have these face coverings. But I would like to get right into the continued conversation that we had at the last school board meeting.
and that is of where we're at and where we're going with our reentry efforts. And again, I do want to just reaffirm our planning priorities as they've been since prior to we even went into the lockdown, and that has been that the health and safety of students and staff are a priority of ours, needing to provide highly effective learning opportunities for all, and then finally, knowing that we will need to be flexible and responsive. So I don't necessarily want to read all of these items to you, but certainly we have a plan that we've moved forward with. We were able to get quite a bit of clarity based on suggestions from the school board and the approval of how best to move forward, and that was to basically, our goal is to try and get our kids back 5 days a week next school year. That is our goal. And we did send out a message to families and staff regarding the board's decision to move forward in that direction. Obviously, we've had a lot of comments, questions, and concerns since then, and we'll continue to field those comments and questions and concerns throughout. The great part about it is we do plan on moving forward with updated safety protocols and plans and updated info on instructional models that we plan on sharing with staff. So that will be tomorrow. We have been garnering staff feedback and have taken staff feedback from the respective survey into consideration. And I think the staff member that just provided their commentary, I think raises a lot of great points and raises a lot of great questions, to which we do not have all of the answers to at this time. But certainly we're going to provide as much information as we have to our staff tomorrow. On Wednesday, now I do want to clarify this because at the last meeting, which happened to be last week, seems like forever ago now, we did mention that we thought we would be getting communications out to families possibly on Tuesday. We want to take a day to kind of pause, not necessarily knowing where the board is at with some of the things that we'll be bringing forward. So the board, should they have any additional questions, we want to be able to provide answers before we send out any communications to our families. So as early as Wednesday, and likely Wednesday afternoon, end of day, we will be sending a message to families with updated safety protocols, of which we'll be providing you tonight, plans and updated info on instructional models, school calendar updates, and then the family commitment survey itself. So again, the idea is we're going to be providing them with a lot of information that is absolutely necessary so that they can make the best decision for their respective student and or students. And talking to Kate earlier, I've got 2 students at home that are going to be at Eisenhower next year, and the same solution may not be the best for either one of them. And those are great conversations that we're having as a family to determine how best we're going to move forward as we lay out plans for next fall. And then, again, the survey will be open for a week. We do think that should provide at least enough opportunity for families to be able to, again, read through all of the information that we have at this time, and then be able to make, again, that decision. And again, just want to clarify that just because a family determines something on this survey in the next week or so doesn't mean that as a district we can't be flexible and responsive. Again, one of our goals as families, again, as we get closer to the start of the school year. So nobody will be locked in, but again, we do need, for planning purposes, to have an idea of roughly where we're going to be as we start next school year. Before I click into the next few slides, I just want to clarify that, again, we have been following the mantra of staying safe to stay open. And that is being championed by the county. And they've done what I believe is a really good job of staying safe to stay open as it relates to business and opening things back up on the business side and the economic development side. And what that has meant for some businesses is they've had to do things differently in order to, again, stay safe to stay open. And so I just want to make sure that if our goal is to get back to 5 days a week, which again, we had the majority of our families tell us that that's what they wanted, we have to make some adjustments to ramp up to get us to that point. I did mention some of those things at the last meeting. And so I do want to just kind of get into some of these things that, again, if we want to follow the stay safe, to stay open, there are some things that we as a school district are going to need to do different. First of all, we had talked about what we were thinking as it related to masks and facial coverings at the last meeting. We had not made that determination. After further discussion with our pandemic response team, we are recommending the following: that all students in grades 4 through 12 be required to wear masks and facial coverings while in our buildings. All students in grades K through 3 and those in the early learning program will be strongly encouraged to wear masks, facial coverings while in our buildings. I will tell you that this is something that we discussed as a team and as supported by our school nurse, who is in direct contact with other area nurses and that of representatives from Children's Hospital, that there was actually a strategic reason why we chose K through 3 as optional or highly recommended versus 4th through 12th. And that is because of the research that's out there now that they are not transmitting at the same rates as older kids are. All students grades K through 12 will be required to wear masks and facial coverings while on school buses. So again, this will go for students in grades K through 12. All staff and visitors will be required to wear masks, facial coverings while in our buildings, and so will our bus drivers. We agree with the pandemic team's, response team's recommendation, and I brought this for you here in today. Please know that, like anything else, exceptions will need to be made on a case-by-case basis, whether it's for health reasons, whether it's for developmental reasons for a student. You know, they may have certain conditions that just won't, you know, they won't be in school if they're, you know, trying to rip something off their, so we're going to just need to work as needed, but again, just wanted to provide you with this general protocol that, again, we will be including in our information to families that will go out, and again, also to staff tomorrow and to families on Wednesday. Again, as mentioned, we believe that we need to be prepared for 3 key options going into next school year. First of all, as we've mentioned all along, we know that next school year will be a disruptive year. We know that. And so we have to be prepared for 3 different things. One is being fully locked down again as we were last March. Secondly, we need to be prepared to ramp up and adjust to some of these new changes that we are looking to make in our safety protocols. We are making some rather drastic changes of the items that we talked about, even at the high school level, that this is the direction you must go in order to get to your next class. These are the things that you need to do before you come in and, you know, get out of the school building. Not to mention kindergartners that haven't even met their teacher yet. And so we are here to tell you that we will look to make calendar updates, and one of them is to, we don't believe that 3 days of professional development is enough for our staff in order to ramp up to where we need to be should we be shut down. And based off of the same reason that we did last year, because of the way that we have the instructional minutes built into our school calendar, it allowed us last year to take a week before we went into the emergency virtual learning so that we could get our staff ramped up to where we needed them to be. Feedback that we received from families is that while the learning happened in a very emergency type way, they were grateful for that. But the feedback was that wasn't good enough. And in order for us to make it better, we have to train up our staff to get us there. We do. Again, we do have a lot of great resources that the school board has invested in. Mind you, not necessarily as a result of the pandemic, but like, for example, we will now have devices for kids in grades kindergarten through 12th grade. We did not have that last spring. So in order to maximize the resources that you've given us, we need to get that training on behalf of our staff. And again, we don't believe we're necessarily shortening anything for our students because, again, we've built in the instructional minutes in our calendars that we've had for years. We also do believe, and as I kind of mentioned, we need to have a dress rehearsal of what we are going to expect of our students and our staff for at least a week or two. And we need to be able to make adjustments based off of that before we get students, again, to the goal of having them back in our schools 5 days a week. And so, again, because of the tremendous changes and adjustments that we will be looking to make, we believe, one, in order for our teachers to better get to meet the needs of their students, they're going to need to be able to do that in smaller cohorts to start with. We'll be able to kind of gather some baseline information, get to know the kids, and again, should we be shut down, we'll have had that opportunity with those kids on a more individualized basis, with the goal of going to 5 days a week. And so we will be informing families that this is what they should expect come next fall. And again, it will not only allow students and staff, but also our families to make the adjustments. You know, how am I getting my kid prepared to, again, if we're expecting kindergartners even to be wearing masks on the buses, or if we're going to have to choose, like if that's not going to work for my student, then I need to make plans and arrangements to drop them off. And so it's going to be a learning curve for all of us. You know, making sure that our families are, and again, I do believe the county is going to come up with some things to support us in our efforts of like, these are all the things you need to do at home before you send your kid to school. And so again, we're going to need to be able to rely on each other, not that we've never have in the past, but more than ever before, to again get us to that point of fully being integrated to 5 days a week, and that again is our goal. And so we're just ramping up to prepare for that. And again, as mentioned, we will be providing that information to staff and families. And again, please know that, as mentioned before, being flexible and responsive is going to be critical. So while this is where we're at today, things may continue to change. And we've got great staff, we've got great leadership to be able to do that. And again, I do believe our families are going to play an integral part of that as well. Now, getting into fall sports specifically, the WIAA did come out with a delay of the start of the fall sports season. As was mentioned in one of the comments for the privilege of the floor, you know, we are starting to see a lot of things, you know, like that was tried with Major League Baseball, that's being tried elsewhere. And again, just like we are being responsive, so are others at this time too, and they are making adjustments as needed. And so this is where the WIAA has landed. The current plan calls for low-risk sports to begin August 17, and that would include girls golf, girls swimming, boys and girls cross country, and girls tennis. And that further delayed was that of the higher-risk sports to begin on September 7th, and that would be football, boys soccer, boys and girls volleyball. And again, because they are our state association, that is what we will be following. I did want to clarify a little bit that maybe obviously there's a lot of information coming and going, and so again, I do know that this has been, we've discussed this in the past, but sometimes things get confusing because you hear about federal funding at the state level or this new stimulus package, and they're looking at adding more money into it. And so I just wanted to kind of remind us of where we're at as far as the dollars that have been allocated to us as a result of the COVID relief. And it was all determined based on Title I eligibility. And that's just what they chose. Now, again, these are not Title I restricted dollars. They were just based off of title eligibility to determine how much money each district would get. So, for example, title dollars are restricted. Well, these are restricted too, but they are in response to what we've had to accrue in expenses specifically related to COVID. And so an allocation of approximately $92,000 is what we are eligible for, and that because, again, we are kind of like the fiscal agent for our local private schools as well. We need to kind of share some of that with them, and so that's approximately $15,000 of that. And then there were other dollars that, again, I believe Crislin may have even mentioned a couple times, that again, these were different dollars, but we just were not eligible for them. Just because, we didn't meet the eligibility requirements as were laid out by the governor, which again, we didn't necessarily disagree with, but certainly it was, things like economic disadvantage, access to personal computing devices, access to internet, and then ELA scores on the state assessment. Probably one of the most difficult decisions that I've had to make, and we as at least an administrative team and that of the pandemic response team have had to make, was the event of graduation that we announced last week, that we were going to go away from a face-to-face graduation and instead move to the alternative that we've been mentioning all along, and that was a digital or virtual graduation. I can't share with you enough. I completely understand the emotion that we not only kind of went into with it, but certainly we knew the response of how it would be reacted to from those receiving those news. And certainly we chose to make a decision that we were going to cancel that face-to-face and move to the alternative out of an abundance of caution. Simply stated, we've always said that we will go along with the county's guidance and recommendations as they are our local health agency. We also said that data and the disease would drive our decisions as well. And so, given that, we had to make this difficult decision. In response from the county, they did not recommend any groups gathered of more than 100. We actually, based on the survey, we were expecting over 500 attendees at each of the events. While I know what we've done to date could certainly not replace their senior year, we have tried to find very unique ways to honor our current class. And we're going to continue to do that. And so we have spent a lot of energy, a lot of time. When I say we, I'm not just talking about our staff, but our students as well. Our students, over the course of several days, came in to prepare for this digital and virtual learning option. Our staff prepared several days, weeks, in order for us to get us to this alternative that we had mentioned to our families all along, that that's what we would do should we not be able to host a face-to-face graduation. And we do plan on airing that graduation on Friday via a YouTube feed. And I've had the absolute pleasure of being able to preview them. And again, certainly it does not replace what we could do, but it's certainly a very viable alternative, most certainly. That will allow us to, again, we had principals speaking our student speakers. We had, the presentation of the class by myself. Amy Crosby accepted the class on behalf of the board. And again, this all went in knowing that we might not be able to have a face-to-face graduation. Again, one of the most difficult decisions I personally have ever had to make. Certainly we did not take it lightly, but again, we went with the county's guidance, and we had data drive our decision. But certainly understand the emotion that goes with that when something like that has to be put to the wayside. So I can certainly appreciate that. I do want to just clarify a few other things related to graduation that I don't want to dwell on. I do know that there was some misinformation out there suggesting that we were the only school district in the county that did not move forward with a face-to-face graduation, and that is not an accurate statement. A neighbor of ours, Muskego, the other neighbor, Elmbrook, they did not move forward with their face-to-face graduations either, as well as others. They all, again, each district kind of had to look at whatever guidance they were being provided. Now, the other thing that I want to point out is some of these school districts do have a local agency, a local health agency, where maybe they were given different, recommendations or guidance based on the information that they had. And again, I can't speak for why the other districts did what they did, but I can speak to why we did what we did. And again, we felt was in the best interest of the school district, our students, their families. Why did we wait so long to cancel? We were holding out hope. We certainly wanted to be able to have this opportunity for our students and their families. But we also couldn't wait much longer in order for us to let families know that we had to either move in one direction or go with the alternative. Certainly, if I could have predicted that there would be the data, that we would have the data that we're currently experiencing, I wish I would have had it 4 weeks ago, but that's not where we were when we provided an alternative date. And, one may ask, okay, you're sending kind of a conflicting message. We're out here, saying that our goal is to get students back face-to-face 5 days a week. And that is what we recommended, and that's what the board approved. And simply put, because education is compulsory. Educating kids is what we are engaged to do. I don't want to minimize the event itself, but that is not a required event. And there are also many other reasons, again, why we should have students back in school. But again, I can understand why that can be conflicting. And again, we did not get the support of our county to move forward with our graduation, but so far, we do have the support of our county to have the goal of going back to school 5 days a week at this time. I did want to provide additional updates, and again, a lot of things there have been a lot of moving parts kind of throughout the last few months, and I just did want to let people know that this has not fallen off our docket. President Crosby had mentioned a couple months ago that we were going to be pulling together an advisory committee to look at our diversity and inclusion in our schools. We have been and continue to work with staff to review current practices and how to refine engagement strategies with students, staff, and families. Our goal is to form an advisory committee related to this work that would include students, staff, parents, guardians, and at-large community members. Our goal is to have the committee in place and active by October. And again, it doesn't mean that we aren't going to be doing things prior to that. But again, based off of what we just laid out with regard to school reentry, there are going to be moving parts with that too. But I think once those things somewhat settle, we can really focus on this work too. So again, just wanted to provide that additional update to you as well. I guess that is my update at this time.
All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that should be pulled out for separate consideration? Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second. Oh, Mitch, I beat you.
Motion by Mr. Kurth, second by Ms. Manley to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Hands down. All opposed. Motion passes. On to our regular agenda. Item A on our regular agenda is to discuss, approve the 2020-2023 strategic plan.
So we have provided to the board our draft strategic plan ideas and suggestions for the next 3 years. I can't believe actually this is now the third formal strategic plan that I've entered in since I've been here. And it's actually, the planning has been great because it allows us to ensure that we as a district team are on the same page. And I think with the board recently also having their work session and kind of reviewing the strategic plan, and then from there developing, you know, their goals based off of that, I think is certainly critically important. And so I did want to just mention that there was an edit that was provided, and that we made the change based off of the last update that I just mentioned, and that is under Goal 1, students will graduate ready for college careers and future opportunities. Under Research and Development, we have added the review and refine as necessary engagement practices regarding diversity and inclusion topics. So I did want to just mention that since the board had met, that was the only edit that we had provided. So again, we would formally appreciate a motion and an approval for this so that we can continue our planning, but again, have kind of the board's blessing to move in this direction. And once we have that approval, we will remove draft and post it on our website and get to work most certainly.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the 2020-2023 strategic plan draft as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kurth, a second by Mr. Helmer. Any discussion?
I'll just make a comment. Thank you for adding the diversity and inclusion to the student section.
And I just want to comment too that when we met as a board, we were very appreciative, as the work session really dug into these as well, and we just appreciate the thought that's put behind it to move our district forward. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Hands down, all opposed. Motion passes. Moves us to item B, discuss, approve education foundation funding.
Yeah, so we have been asked by the board to bring this back so that the board could have formal vote on the administration's recommendation to pause the funding that we've been providing to the Education Foundation for several reasons. One, they currently do not have an executive director. Two, COVID-19 is impacting philanthropy and fundraising. And three, allowing them to reset themselves as well in determining what direction they're going to move forward in. Right now, as I understand it, they do have about $115,000. They've actually reached out to us recently, and they are moving forward with a, I guess I'd call it a scholarship or a grant, mini grant.
Yeah, I would call it a mini grant program.
So what they are doing, and again, I know Dr. Sanders will be working directly with them, and so there will be funding, and we can certainly provide this update to you in my next update to the board, or in the board packet, Diana, for next meeting. But I think they've got a nice laid out plan. I think it'll allow them to kind of build some steam, you know, of what type of work they're in it for. And again, it's to provide that margin of excellence that, again, they're not necessarily there to supplant what the school district should be providing, but instead supporting innovation. And so they are asking either individual teachers, a team of teachers, an entire school to apply for these mini grants. There will be a process in place, a vetting process to determine, and again, is it aligned with our strategic plan? Is it aligned with the school's goals? And so Kelly and the team will work then closely with the foundation to provide, kind of that vetting, and then I believe their goal is to provide those mini grants yet this fall. So again, we would recommend, and again, we're not seeing this necessarily as a, we still want a strong working relationship with the foundation. It's just a matter of hitting pause on the funding for it. And again, while I can't necessarily speak for them, certainly I think, would they like additional funding? Sure, but I think we have a pretty good agreement right now that let's work with what we have now, with kind of the new setting. Do we need a full-time executive director? That's still something that they're trying to kind of get through. But again, what can they do now to kind of build that steam in order to kind of garner that marketing material that they're going to need when they start asking for dollars again? So again, our recommendation was and will continue to be to halt funding at least for the upcoming school year. We can certainly revisit this as we enter into the next budget season. But again, at this time, that would be our recommendation, and we would certainly appreciate direction either way, and it's mainly so that Patrick has direction in the budget process itself.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the Educational Foundation funding as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kerr, second by Mr. Helmer. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Hands down. All opposed? Motion passes. That moves us to our state aid update.
I did want to just bring to your attention, and Patrick will be providing a brief explanation. There was an article done, I believe it was the Freeman, touting that we were seeing a significant increase in state aid. It's good news, but we just want to kind of quelch the ideas that people may have as far as what that means. So I guess, Patrick, I'll hand it over to you on what that financial impact will have, not only on our budget, but what it could have as far as on taxpayers.
Thank you. The July 1st state aid estimate was produced, and it shows that the school district of New Berlin will be receiving about an 80% increase in state aid, which equates to about $2.25 million of additional general equalization aid. There are really three factors that are driving this right now. The first is that the school district has been going through an enrollment increase over the past few years, and that enrollment increase has started to hit our 3-year rolling average, which means even that for example this next year, even if our enrollment numbers were to remain flat, we would still see an increase in FTE of approximately 22 students. More students means more money. So that's the first simple explanation. Secondly, because the district did some refinancing in the recent past, what that refinancing has done, refinancing of its general obligation debts, Fund 38 debt, by doing that refinancing, what it has done is it's lowered our shared costs. By lowering our shared cost, it means that a district like New Berlin, which receives there are 3 levels of aid. We receive all the primary aid, partial secondary aid, all of our tertiary aid, the third level, is negative. By decreasing those costs, those shared costs, it moves essentially less that cost into the tertiary level and more of it into the secondary level, which means we lose less, is what I'm saying. And finally, the increased amount of money that we're that the state overall is distributing in state aid this year, all of those dollars are going to reduce the tertiary aid loss. So again, it's another factor that it's reducing the amount of aid that we lose, which means we're actually getting more aid. So we're not getting more money to spend. We're just receiving more money in state aid, which will have a positive impact on our property taxes this next year. It's not going to mean, and I have to emphasize, this does not mean we're going to get an extra $2.25 million in revenue. It just means it's coming from a different pot. The thing we also need to be very careful with is, and this I had some discussions with our forecasting consultant and some discussions with the Department of Public Instruction just to confirm this, but we have to be very careful that we understand this could very well be a one-year blip. And so this year we could receive a large increase in state aid, but as that equalizes in the subsequent years, we could also see in the subsequent years large decreases in our state aid. So it's going to be my job, and I'm going to ask for your help in reminding the public that we will certainly see a reduction in property taxes for schools this year, but if we see an increase in the subsequent years, it's not because we're doing something wrong, it's because that aid formula is catching up with us, and we will see reductions in aid, which means now we're going to start shifting more money into the property tax pocket. But again, the biggest message with this is that this does not mean that we're receiving more money for us to spend on general education. It just means that more money is coming from the aid bucket instead of the property tax bucket.
So Patrick, we were assuming reduced taxes based on the preliminary budget that you presented. How much more will this impact at this time? Given these numbers from July 1, what average savings should be expected for a taxpayer?
Based on this estimate, and I also must caution, this is an estimate. We're not going to know what this number actually is until October 15th, but it should translate in about a 45-cent decrease per 1,000.
So on a $250,000 home?
Yeah, we should see about $175 on a $300,000 home.
Thank you. Really, we just wanted to provide that update so that in case you were being contacted by whomever, again, the media, tried doing a good job, but sometimes that can get lost in translation. So we just wanted to make sure you were clear, at least as a school board.
All right, the next 4 items on the agenda are first read to policies. The item D is the first read to revisions to seclusion and restraint policy.
Yeah, so the first policy before you is revisions to seclusion and restraint. Attached is the policy, and keep in mind that the changes are mandatory based on new Wisconsin state statutes that is in effect and must be approved prior to any in-person instruction and students. We present this as a first read and will seek your approval at the first meeting in August.
Next one is the first, item E, first read to revisions of the Title IX policy.
Yeah, so just in case, we do have Nicole Jones, our Director of Employment Services, on the line, should you have any questions at this time. Although we would ask that maybe if you did have questions, just send them to us and we'll be happy to gather all the information necessary before you approve this at the next meeting. On March 6, 2020, the U.S. Department of Ed, the Office of Civil Rights released its final rule, which amends existing Title IX regulations. The department's first action of its kind in quite some time. The final rule, which encompasses both the amended regulations and accompanying commentary, exceed 2,000 pages and are scheduled to take effect on August 14, 2020. The regulations bring sweeping changes to how educational institutions address, investigate, and adjudicate allegations of sexual harassment occurring within their programs and activities. These changes include jurisdictional changes based on the definition of sexual harassment and of educational programs and activities in the final rule. As such, the amended regulations will require significant revisions to existing policies and administrative guidelines and necessitate staff training prior to the start of the 2020-21 school year. We are presenting for first read the attached, which is the Title IX policy as developed by Neola based upon the OCR's final rule. Please note that many people behind the scenes have spent countless amounts of time. Janet, I'm not sure within your role if you were having to dealing with any of this Title IX stuff or any others, but it is extremely complex, especially with all the changes that have been made. So know that a lot of work has gone into what we've provided you, but most certainly we continue to work with not only Neola, which is our basically advisor to updating policies, but also legal counsel as well. Nicole Jones has championed this effort along with Director of Student Services, Amanda Mazurkowicz, and again, they've done an incredible job of trying to stay on top of the moving target, and I think we're finally starting to settle in. And so again, we would certainly entertain any questions, but should you have any questions between now and the next meeting, please send them to me, and then we'll be happy to provide any clarification needed. But again, please know that a lot of time has been spent just getting this to you, this draft to you at this time. Again, no need to approve tonight, but we will be seeking approval at the next meeting.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
There's like two options in here for one portion of the language. Is someone making a decision on that before we vote on this? Or were you looking for feedback on these two? They're very similarly worded, but
Let me just check with Diana to see if there was, did we make a determination, Diana? I thought we did.
That might be a question for Nicole.
Nicole, were you able to hear that question? Page 11, we didn't necessarily, in the draft that we provided the board, just so you know, when we work with Neola, there's literally like a checklist and then like what's best for us. They're still both aligned and within the regulation and the suggestion, but, so Nicole, can you clarify that, please?
Yeah, are we looking at, you said
Page 11.
Page 11? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's two different options there, and it's, the option 2 gives like really specific types of discipline consequences, and it does still say including but not limited to versus option 1. If we delete option 2 and go with option 1, it just leaves it very open-ended. So again, yeah, we're just looking for, specific. So do we want this to be very detailed in here with those disciplinary options listed, or do we want to kind of leave that more open-ended?
And I guess, Nicole, what would your recommendation be?
I think I would like to leave it more open-ended only because it's really going to be on a case-by-case basis, and with things, things change all the time. Like, my preference is probably to leave a lot of these out. And a lot of this stuff is already in our student handbook, a lot of these consequences and whatnot. So my preference, I think, would just be to go with option 1 and leave it very broad.
I guess I would support that, and so assume that is what, good, thanks for catching that, Kate. Assume that would be our recommendation then, moving into the approval process.
okay, sounds good. Thank you.
And Joe, was that recommendation, and maybe Nicole knows this answer, was that supported by legal counsel as well?
Yes.
Okay, so the second option versus the first option on page 11.
I think either one was really up to us. And I
Okay.
think, and again, like Neola, they will only provide us with options that are worthy of being approved.
That
so-
withstands sort of legal muster is what they're after, right?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so any questions to that, between now and the next board meeting, to email those to Joe as well. The next first read is a policy recommended by the Finance Committee, Policy 3440, job-related expenses.
Yeah, so we'd hand these over to Quislin, who's the Finance Committee Chair.
Thank you. So the Finance Committee met, and we vetted and recommended for some changes, Policy 3440, related to job-related expenses. You can see in the proposed document that some of our changes were centered around just some language and some clarifications about who was in charge of these issues, the superintendent or his designee, so that Joe has some flexibility and doesn't have to be beholden to make all of these decisions on his own. And then we also talked about personal vehicles and employees using personal vehicles, and we added in some language about that. And then we also put sort of codified into this policy the fact that employees in our school district have to seek reimbursement based on the travel and expense workbook that's present on the SDNB intranet, which I didn't know about, I didn't know existed before we talked about it. So that's important to sort of codify that into the policy so that all the employees know what the standard is and where they can seek that information for reimbursement. So as a member of the Finance Committee and the chair of the committee, I would move this be approved by the full board.
So at this point, we're following our policy, we're doing a first read, so.
Oh, that's right, I apologize.
No, that's fine.
I
So if anybody
apologize.
has any questions between now and next week, is it okay for them to contact you?
Absolutely, and I will move it next week, or next time.
And then the next one is Policy 6610, Student Activity Fund. This was also by the Finance Committee.
Right, so this is a more abbreviated policy. 6610 was a short policy, but one of the issues that we kind of discussed was how senior classes may use unused funds that they raised during their senior year. So we addressed that in this policy because we didn't like how it was structured in the current policy, so we made a recommendation about how they should use those funds so that they can move those funds to manage future reunions and things like that in the future if they have money left over, which would assist them with that effort. So that was what we had recommended.
All right, great, and if there's any questions on that, please let Ms. Wondercheck know as well, and then we'll move right into the Finance Committee update.
Great, thank you. So I am the chair of the Finance Committee, and I haven't provided an update to the full update to the board since we have convened the Finance Committee. We first started meeting as a Finance Committee in May of 2019, so we've been meeting for longer than a year, which is great. We've met almost every month since May 2019. At those meetings, we review each month's financial reports with Patrick's help. He submits those reports to us in advance. We have heard our CFO, Patrick Miller, update us as to the major software conversion from our old financial system known as Alio into a new financial system known as Skyward. And that conversion has been long and arduous, I know, for Patrick, but he is he's explained to us how much better it's going to be for us as a district because we'll be able to get better information as a board about what the state of our finances is, and therefore we can hopefully better answer questions of the public and have more transparency as well. Patrick has also helped to educate our committee on some of the definitions of the various funds that are involved in administering a school district like ours, which I've found particularly interesting and helpful. We as a committee have reviewed and modified approximately 8 different district financial policies and deleted some superfluous policies as well when we find those. We've also moved some other policies into the realm of personnel and facilities, even though they were under the financial category, because they were better suited under personnel and facilities. We have established some goals as well, and the goals that we've established are as follows. As a subcommittee, we want to continue to do monthly reviews of all of the financial reports of the district and ask questions about those issues as they arise. We want to continue to work through our entire book of financial policies and review them, update them, or delete them as appropriate after discussing them and getting advice too from our CFO, our superintendent, and using the Neola policies that we have at our disposal as well. We also, as a subcommittee, want to continue to provide quarterly updates to the board, so I appreciate this opportunity to provide an update as to what we've been doing. And finally, our final goal is to increase financial transparency in our district, which we all agree is important. And I think as a reminder, our meetings, the subcommittee meetings for the Finance Committee are open to the public. The public may attend and may ask questions as appropriate, and we will try and answer those questions to the best of our ability. And if we don't know the answers, we'll try to find them for you. I do want to say thank you to my other committee members, President Crosby and Mitch Helmer, for being on that committee with me. I appreciate the contributions that both of you have made in the last plus year. And I especially appreciate Patrick, because I'm learning a lot, and I appreciate you teaching it to us. So that's my update.
Thank you. And we'll be posting, as the committees review their goals, we'll be posting those goals on the district website as well under the committees. I believe we have item I1, action item from closed session.
Yes, I move to approve the employment services report as presented.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Manley, a second by Ms. Schultz to approve the employment services report. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Hands down, all opposed. Motion passes. This brings us to item J, future meetings and dates. So board meetings are generally held on the second and fourth Mondays, beginning at 7 p.m. here in the New Berlin West Commons. We will have a personnel committee meeting August 3rd at 4 p.m. And Ms. Unger, where will that be held? Will that be held here?
No, we've got that scheduled for District Office, Conference Room E.
District Office, okay, thank you. Sorry, I did not have that. Then we will have a board meeting here August 10th at 7 p.m., August 24th at 7 p.m. here with a Finance Committee meeting preceding that at 5:30. And we will have our budget hearing annual meeting. It's rescheduled till September 14th at 7 p.m. at the New Berlin West Performing Arts Center. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Kurth, a second by Mr. Helmer. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Hands down, all opposed. Motion passes. This meeting is adjourned.